Wall Street veteran Bernard Madoff has been arrested and charged with running a $50 billion Ponzi scheme.
Congress wants to know what caused the Enron meltdown.
Now, while the collective rage currently is focused on WorldCom,
Tyco CEO Dennis Kozlowski was convicted of looting hundreds of millions of dollars.
This is one of the biggest fraud cases ever.
Their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Find out more on this week's episode of White Collars, Red Hands.
There have been some famous stories of assumed identity throughout the years. The talented Mr. Ripley, Frank Abagnale Jr., whose life was depicted in Catch Me If You Can, Marlon and Shawn Wayans in White Chicks. And although that last one might have been done to catch criminals, the first two were to cover up or aid in crimes. Today, we talk about one of the worst true-life examples of this as we discuss the true story of Christian Gerhartsreiter, who went by many names on his tour through the U.S., but is best known as Clark Rockefeller. He spent his days pretending to be related to royalty from multiple countries, including the best thing we have to royalty in America, the pillars of century-long generational wealth. He used these personas to swindle women out of money, including one Didi Sohus. But with Didi, he took more than just her money. Christian took away her son. Find out more about how the murder of John and likely his wife Linda Sohus was done, and about how Christian avoided capture for decades afterwards until he made one fatal error that led to his capture on this season 21 finale of White Collars, Red Hands.
I know we haven't gotten into the episode fully, but I like how last week we had somebody who had a lot of fake identities, and now it's going into this episode as well.
Yeah, and it's worse. It's worse. I will say throughout the episode, I basically try to call him Christian at all points unless it makes sense to call him one of his other names. But if it starts with a C, it's him. There's not another C name in this, so... Let me think. Let me pass that through my brain filter really quick. Yeah, that seems to still ring true to me. If it starts with a C, it's him. If that comes up during the show, I'll tell you otherwise.
Sounds good. Yeah.
But yeah, welcome back. My name's Kashawn.
I'm Nina.
And, if this is your first finale, let me tell you how this goes. The 10th episode of every season is a murder committed by someone who is uber wealthy, as far as we put it. And then after the season finale, we take a bit of a break. We do 10 weeks on and 4 weeks off. So we'll be doing this season finale. We'll give you the story of Christian Gerhartsreiter, and then we'll peace out. We'll peace out for a little bit, and I'll enjoy this very rough winter that's happening outside here in New England.
Yeah, it's been rough in Chicago too.
I'm sure it has been everywhere else except for you assholes that are in Miami right now.
Yeah, in LA.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so let's dig in to Christian, very German last name, Gerhartsreiter. Christian Gerhartsreiter was born in a small town in the Alps of West Germany in 1961. His parents were both creatives, with his dad being an artist and his mother a seamstress. Christian himself was known as an unassuming boy with a very overactive imagination. Even at a young age, Christian knew that he wanted more from his life than a small German town. He was fascinated by money, power, and having people like him. In 1978, he got his first opportunity when he chanced into an American couple who were traveling Europe on the train. He struck up a conversation with Elmer and Jean Keln, and at some point, the couple gave Christian their address and told him, likely not believing he ever would, to visit them if he ever found himself in Connecticut, of all places.
This happened to me one time when I was serving somebody at a restaurant that I used to work at. They were like, hey, if you're ever here, here's our number. Call us. We have a farm and you can eat some of our grass-fed beef. And I was like, are you going to murder me?
Yeah, it's a weird proposition. It feels like something that maybe you would take someone up on like 1910. But like now I'd be like, nah, there's Motel 6s, man. I'll stay there.
Well, and also I've watched way too much true crime to just stay with random people. to go to random people's houses without actually knowing them. No thanks.
Yeah, and today's obviously not going to be a good example in the opposite direction. So, well, less than a year later, Christian gained entrance to America using this couple's names and saying they had invited him to stay with them. So he got...
Technically they did.
They did. So he did get a visiting visa, and then he showed up on their doorstep with suitcases in hand being like, yo, I'm here. You said to come.
Guten Tag, bitch.
He stayed with the family for a bit before moving into the home of the Savio family in nearby Berlin, Connecticut, not Germany, Berlin, Connecticut, small town. And he told them that he was an exchange student who was going to finish high school here in the States.
How old was he?
He was 16 at the time.
Oh, okay. So he was at high school age. Okay.
Yeah, he's not 40. He's to the believable age that this would actually work.
Okay, yeah. At first I thought he was like maybe in his 20s. And so I was like, what?
No, you will actually find that if anything, Christian pretends to be older rather than younger. So,
okay. Jailbait.
Yes. They believed him and helped him enroll in the local high school. And this is where he has his first of many name changes, going by Christopher Gerharts Reiter. So now Gerharts and Reiter are two separate names, and his first name is Christopher instead of Christian. He also changed his backstory, dressing very posh and telling everyone that he was part of a noble family in Germany, and that his father was a big businessman as well. Someone said at some point, he said that his dad worked with Mercedes. He says a lot of stuff, though. So if I told you everything he told people, we'd be here for a very long time. And he played the part in the Sevius' home as well, becoming a whiny impression of a millionaire's child. Although he slept on their couch, he expected his foster family to have breakfast ready for him when he awoke, and to make sure that his pants were freshly pressed in the morning.
Bougie. He was bougie. For sure. That's crazy to expect your family that you're just staying with to make you food and brush your pants.
Yeah, you just showed up from Germany to this random family's house. And you're like, by the way, I'm going to yell at you if you haven't cooked the sausages in the morning. He was also disappointed by just small town America in general. He had hyped up the U.S. in his mind for so long as this land of opportunity. But when he saw Berlin, Connecticut, he was very underwhelmed. So he sought a change of pace by once again changing his name. In the same high school, changed his name again. And before he graduated, he decided to go by Chris Gerhardt. I guess you can get away with that because his name was, he changed it to Christopher Gerhartsreiter. And then he's like, just call me Chris Gerhardt. I'm sure there are many other teenage boys that are like, call me Super Speed or something, which would be way more embarrassing.
Go by much dumber names.
Exactly. Eventually, though, now Chris overstayed his welcome with the Sevios, and they kicked him to the curb. He still managed to finish high school and even got accepted to college. And in the early 80s, now Chris Gerhardt began studying acting at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Well, you know, he already is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances, and he's already changing his name. Yeah. So I think this was great preparation for acting school.
He's got a lot of magic ifs going on.
Yes, he does.
Gerhartsreiter had an obsession with old films, specifically Alfred Hitchcock. And this would factor into many stories that he would weave along down the line. And that's why he decided to pursue film specifically in college, choosing an interesting option in the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which does boast at least one famous actor in Willem Dafoe is an alumnus. Oh. But other than that, I mean, I saw it's in the top 50 rated film schools in America, which to me seems not actually that great. So,
nah, not really.
While at college, Christian began to worry about the long-term security of him staying in the U.S., which is why in 1981 he convinced a 22-year-old fellow student, Amy Dunkey, to marry him so that he could get a green card. And in order to convince her to do this, Christian told Amy that if she did not marry him, he would be forcibly deported back to Germany, where they would send him to the front lines of the Cold War to fight the Russians.
I don't know how accurate that part was.
Probably not at all. I mean, he did tell people he was from a noble family, but everything he says is a lie.
Right. Yeah, nothing's true.
So, yeah. There was hardly time, unfortunately, for a honeymoon, though, because the very next day after the marriage, Christian fled to California. He left the day afterwards. He stopped.
He just left his wife?
I mean, there was obviously, it was a loveless marriage. He just convinced her to marry him for the citizenship. But he stopped going to class. He completely dropped out of college. He just left. Amy did eventually file for divorce 11 years later in 1992.
She's like, I haven't seen him in 11 years. I guess I'm going to divorce him.
Yeah, I'm a procrastinator, but I don't think even I'd put off divorcing the man who left the day after our wedding for over a decade. But that is what Amy did. Upon his arrival to Los Angeles County, you knew that Christian would take this as another opportunity to reinvent his personality completely. This time, he settled on one Christopher Chichester.
It's not a better name.
He took the name from one of the teachers at Berlin High School. It was a Mrs. Chichester.
Couldn't there have been a Mrs. Wilson? Like, come on.
Well, it fits the backstory he was going with, because he was telling people that he was from a British royal family.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, in Chichester, there have been a couple of baronets with the name Chichester. There have been 3 earls of Chichester as well. So
there we go.
Something. So you might be asking yourself, but how good was his British accent? He's German. Good enough, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I guess the answer is good enough. I was surprised that no one ever talked about it. He does a British accent for this, and he later does an American accent. And I guess they're just like good enough. Actually, people did say that later when he would read at a children's library later on down the line, and they said he would be able to do a bunch of really good accents. So...
Well, yeah, I was going to say, he did go to film school. Maybe he took a dialect training.
Yeah, he could have just been a good actor, but instead he was crazy.
No, that's too bad. Well, all the good actors are kind of crazy.
Yeah. And he supported this British royal persona by doing things like developing a fancy business card that he would hand out to places he frequented, like social clubs. He would go to churches a lot everywhere he was to kind of like meet people and like talk to people. Like he'd go to really prominent churches because a lot of the most powerful people were at these big churches wherever he would go. He would also hang out at libraries, barber shops, places where he could stay for a bit and kind of just talk to anyone about his highfalutin background and kind of chance into meetings with these powerful people. This business card that he would hand out proudly boasted the fake Chichester family crest that he made, their motto, firm and foi, which is firm and faith in Latin. Might be foi, don't know, but it's spelled F-O-I. And his name, Christopher Chichester, 13th Baronet, on it. Which obviously that is not a real title, but He also dressed and acted the part of a nobleman in polos and slacks with nice shoes and tightly trimmed manners. I mentioned this later, but he monogrammed like all of his clothes. With
That's weird.
I guess his middle name also started with a C because it was 3 C's. He'd put it on his socks, his polo shirts, his robes at home. He had monogrammed towels, like everything was monogrammed.
How Southern woman of him. How Southern belle of him.
Yeah, I bet he also had a poster that said, live, laugh, love.
Live, laugh, love. Faith, fall, football.
When he started looking for a place to live, he started by flirting with all the cougars that he could find.
Hell yeah.
He made a habit of wooing older women by acting like he was in his 40s, like I had mentioned earlier. He was like 23 at this point, but he was trying to act. People said he would act like he's in his 40s. I don't know if he ever claimed to be in his 40s or if he would just like
act older.
Yeah, his personality was so refined. He knew so many things that he just seemed like he was in his 40s. Even men liked to talk to him, and that's because he was a grade A bullshitter. People said his car, a beaten down Datsun, which did not match his personality at all. Why a royal family member would be driving a Datsun is, beyond me.
Hey, he's trying to live below his means.
I guess so, but it happened to be plastered with Post-it notes on the inside.
Oh, that's weird. That's funny.
They were reminders of what he had said about his personality.
Oh my God.
So that he could remember what he had told people.
That's funny.
And he used these lies to obviously manipulate people. He would go far for the lie too. At one point, he created a fake newspaper talking about a fictional family member, Francis Chichester. And it mentioned how young Charles had just moved into the neighborhood. It was like a fake newspaper from a town over that was talking about how this famous nobleman's grandson had moved close to their town. And he made this whole newspaper and he printed it out and he like brought it into the barber shop he was hanging out, being like, look, they wrote a piece about me.
He didn't need to do all that.
But he did. He also used his fake notoriety to get things like a public access TV show called Inside San Marino, where he would interview other people that were prominent in his LA suburb. He also did just use it to find places to crash. He would look for divorcees or widows with big empty houses, and he would prey on these women by love bombing them with attention and looking for any way that he could steal. And that's how he met Didi Sohus.
So we would call him a hobosexual.
What?
Hobosexual, which is a person who gets into relationships so they can have a place to stay because they are homeless.
Okay, thank you, Urban Dictionary.
You're welcome.
For my word of the day. Didi was an elderly widow whose lights were beginning to dim in the attic, if you know what I mean. And what was left was constantly being drowned in booze because she was a terrible alcoholic. This made her a perfect target to be conned by Mr. Chichester, who soon found himself living rent-free in the guest house on her property after talking his way into it.
Hell yeah.
It is believed that Christian was stealing from Didi where he could, but the real issue came when Didi's son John showed up. John Sohus, a nerdy computer programmer living in the days before that would make him rich, had just married Linda Sohus, an artist who desperately loved her 6 cats. John showed up. These people are dead, Nina. Don't laugh.
I can laugh.
John showed up at Didi's house and asked to move in, and was surprised to find that her guest house was already inhabited by a sketchy stranger who said he was literal royalty. Also, during this time, Christian, just side note, took the personality of a nudist. He told people he was a nudist, and he was just constantly naked in the guest house, which kind of makes
it's because he didn't have money to do his laundry.
Well, after he monogrammed them, all the monograms would fall off. They were just iron on, right? So he's like, I can't wash anything. I can't wear
these clothes too much.
Or else I lose all my monograms.
Yep.
So just imagine him, at least while he's here, he's constantly naked, which is weird. John and Linda stayed at the house for a bit, but then Linda told a friend that John had received the opportunity to interview for a position in the government, and that they also wanted Linda for a job. Although this does seem weird, it does happen, such as in academia, actually. There are quote-unquote spousal hires. Basically, like, I want to come be a professor at your college, but I have this spouse. Will you give them a job too?
Got the old ball and chain over here. They need to work.
And it does happen. They'll be like, okay, we'll also offer your spouse a job if you come here. Linda said to her friend that she couldn't share details about the job, but told her that they would be going to New York City for 2 weeks. During this time, she paid in advance to have her cats kenneled for those 2 weeks.
All 6 of them?
All 6 of them. After dropping them off, 8 weeks passed with no word from Linda or John. Eventually, the kennel tracked down Linda's sister, who found it very uncharacteristic of Linda to do that, and thought something might be wrong. She called Dee Dee, but Dee Dee said that John and Linda had to go to Europe on a secret mission. And this obviously was not a satisfying answer to Linda's sister, so the family filed a missing persons report. The police arrived at Dee Dee's, and she told them the same story, that John and Linda were, in fact, on a secret mission in Europe, and that it had been confirmed by someone that she called her source. And that's all she would say. They're on a secret mission in Europe. I have a source that tells me so, that is feeding me information about them as they go through Europe. With that, I mean, the police kind of reached a dead end. I mean, they couldn't prove that anything happened or that there was any foul play. So they kind of just had to go like, okay, like, I guess they're in Europe. And then nothing happened. 3 months later, Linda's family did receive 2 postcards supposedly from the couple postmarked from Paris, but they did not divulge anything about why they went or when they would be coming back. At the same time, Dee Dee actually had a change of heart, and she filed her own missing persons report for the couple months after the first one, admitting that her quote-unquote source was none other than Christopher Chichester, who had suddenly moved out after John and Linda's disappearance and didn't leave a forwarding address. And with him went John's pickup truck. She, however, did not confirm that he stole it, just that it went missing, she thinks, around the same time that Chichester had left.
This is when it's convenient to scam old people because they just don't know.
Yeah, she was definitely getting taken advantage of and kind of willing to believe whatever he said. And with that, the trail for John and Linda went cold. The investigation went nowhere. Christian, however, went back to Connecticut, of all places, in John's truck and settled into Greenwich, Connecticut. Of course, a change of scenery once again comes with a change of name. And this time, he was to be known as Christopher Crow, spelled with an E at the end. This personality was American, from Los Angeles, and claiming to be a writer and producer, most prominently as the executive producer for the revival of Alfred Hitchcock Presents that happened in the 1980s. And at the time, Google didn't exist, but if it did, and you looked it up, there was indeed an executive producer for that show by that name. In fact, that same man, Christopher Crow, later wrote the script for the well-laureled movie The Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, I've heard of that.
That's a movie that I have also heard of and have probably not seen. At least Christian did his due diligence this time. I mean, he did some research. In Greenwich, he actually got hired to multiple high-paying jobs that he quickly lost because he lied his ass off to get them in the first place.
Nice.
He worked at a brokerage company in their computer division as a computer expert, but was fired when they discovered, not because he couldn't work with computers, which I don't think he could work with computers, but he got fired because it was discovered that the social security number he had given them when he got hired belonged to David Berkowitz, a.k.a. the Son of Sam killer from New York City, a very famous serial killer.
Yeah.
It isn't known if this was done as a joke or like by accident, but whatever it is, it will definitely get you fired when they find out.
Yeah, you can't use the wrong social security number. You can't do that.
Especially for a serial killer. Then he worked at a securities company as a corporate bond sales manager. He was actually like the VP of a department for corporate bond sales for a securities firm. But he was fired when his employees quickly discovered he had no idea what he was talking about. Like his subordinates were like, "You've never sold a corporate bond in your life. You have no idea what you're doing." So he got fired. Then he got a job at a second securities firm.
What the fuck?
He quit pretty soon after getting that job because he actually left Connecticut completely. And the reason he had to run is because he had actually tried to sell John Sohus's truck without a title to a local minister. The potential buyer reported this to the police, which quickly discovered that Christopher Crowe was actually their missing Christopher Chichester, and the truck belonged to John Sohus. Christian got word of this and packed his bags and left for the big city before they could ever come to question him. And this time he was headed for the coast opposite of LA, New York City. And this time he was going to be staying a while. So, you know the drill. A new city, a new
name.
That's right. This time, Christian's persona would go on to be his most famous and long-lasting, Clark Rockefeller. He claimed to be related to the rich and powerful Rockefeller family to various degrees of closeness. At some points, he would say he was close enough to be worth $400 million. And others only distantly because he was orphaned when his parents were killed in a car crash as a kid. And he actually never kept in contact with the other Rockefellers after he was severed from the family this way. All people knew is that he had a nice apartment on 57th Street filled with what seemed to be authentic modern art masterpieces. Every piece of clothing he owned was, once again, monogrammed, and he could be seen walking his Gordon setter around Manhattan. So this time, he painted himself as an eccentric rich man who was uber paranoid, claiming to have a radio device that was constantly connected to a securities office that monitored where he went and could be called if he was in danger, and epitomizing privacy so that he basically didn't have to answer hard questions about his background or finances. He also made a point to never carry money, definitely not because he didn't have any, but because he was an eccentric millionaire. And he also never ate at restaurants because you couldn't trust the kitchens.
You know, he's not totally wrong about that.
Well, fair enough. As a man of his stature, he began to hang around wealthy social clubs and, once again, churches, like the well-known St. Thomas Church in Manhattan, where he rubbed elbows with the elite, including one Julia Boss, the sister of his future wife, Sandra Boss. So Sandra Boss was a recent Harvard Business School graduate, and after Julia recommended the match, Clark threw a Clue, like the board game, themed party and invited Sandra over to solve the murder. They bonded over business. She also came dressed as Miss Scarlet.
Ooh.
He was Professor Plum, if you care for some reason. Sandra recently had been working on debt markets with Merrill Lynch. And Clark lied that he worked on reconstructing debt markets in developing nations. So, you know, whatever that means. But they kind of hit it off. And they continued to see each other and eventually tied the knot. By the way, he made up many stories about why his family didn't attend the wedding when it actually happened. His parents, They were obviously dead. He told the dead parents' story to her, including his mother, who just so happened to be, as he tells it, famous actress from the 1940s, Ann Carter, who was actually still alive at this time. So he missed that one.
Insane.
Knew who Christopher Crowe was. Didn't look up to see if Ann Carter was still alive. And obviously the other Rockefellers, well, they just couldn't make it. They're busy, right? His best man was quite literally the dog.
It's man's best friend.
His groomsmen were just his dog.
Man's best friend.
That's sad.
It is sad. When you're a liar.
I guess so. Clark obviously didn't want to draw any legal suspicion, though, for filing a marriage license with a fake name. And also, I don't know exactly how the dates line up. I don't think he was, but he could have still been married to Amy at this point.
I was going to ask you, is he still married to Amy?
I'm pretty sure this is like a couple of years, this is a few years after she filed for divorce, because that was 1992. But, it still wouldn't look good, and he'd have to, he can't put a fake name on there, I think. I don't know how it works.
I would have to say no.
Yeah, but so he didn't want to to get legal suspicion by filing a marriage license with a fake name. So he told Sandra he would take care of the whole thing, and he just never did. So technically, legally, they were never married.
What?
But she thought they were, which is all that matters. Clark also didn't make any money. He worked for these developing nations, according to him, pro bono, because they were so poor that if he charged them a fee, it would be, inhumane. Meanwhile, Sandra took a job at the famous consulting firm McKinsey & Company, so they were making plenty off of her salary alone. She climbed the ranks. She got pretty high up in McKinsey. Eventually, in the early 2000s, Sandra briefly left him, actually, citing that he was emotionally and sometimes physically abusive. But soon, he used his con man ways to talk her back into the marriage. And then shortly after, she was locked down when she became pregnant. Yeah. When Sandra was pregnant, Christian apparently got into a verbal altercation with a woman while walking his Gordon setter in Central Park, after which the police showed up to question him. Although nothing came of that questioning, it spooked him enough to be on the move again, telling Sandra that they were now moving to the great state of New Hampshire.
Yay! I love New Hampshire.
I live there. But specifically, I don't know if I love it, but I do live here.
It was a joke.
Yeah, well, specifically, the small but incredibly wealthy village of Corning, which once boasted the vacation home of President Woodrow Wilson. Sandra bought a lovely estate there for $750,000, which Christian then funneled more of her money into by tearing parts of the house down and preparing the backyard for a pool in New Hampshire, which is a bad idea. And of course, with a new state comes a new
name.
Wrong, Nina. He actually gotcha. He actually kept the Clark Rockefeller identity here, if at least because his wife would probably question why he underwent a whole personality change. There's someone else there now.
I did think that after I said it. I was like, wait, he's married though. How's he going to get away with changing his name? How's he going to spin that one?
Yeah, he could have. He continued to pitch the idea that he was a reclusive multimillionaire. But I will say people seem to be less impressed with that in the middle of nowhere, New England, than they were in New York City. People were kind of just like, this guy's an asshole. People were more like to think that this guy was just an asshole than that, oh, wow, this is someone powerful that we should really get close to. I think people care about that less out here.
For sure.
Sandra and Christian went along for a while, and then their daughter, Ray Rockefeller, was born in 2001. Many people say that his daughter was the only thing Christian truly ever loved. And she was definitely one of the only things he would take risks. And she was definitely one of the only things that he would take risks for, as we will see in a bit. He homeschooled her until she was about to enter kindergarten, at which point Sandra insisted that she needed to be around other children. So the family left Cornish behind to move to Boston so she could attend Southfield School for Girls, a prestigious Boston all-girls school. Sandra paid $2.7 million for a nice, large townhouse on the same street as Senator John Kerry in the Beacon Hill neighborhood of Boston.
Wow.
That same year,
I thought you were going to say she spent that much on her schooling, and I was going to be like, what the hell?
No. I mean, maybe over the course of a lifetime, but no.
Right.
It's her house. That same year, though, Christian and Sandra's marriage once again began to decline. They got, from at least one account, they got into a large fight after attending a parent-teacher conference where Christian would not listen to feedback from the teacher about their daughter's behavior in class for some reason. And the fight got so big that they ended up separating. Like, she kicked him out of the house. And then also, probably more upsetting to Clark at this time, she cut him off financially. She also happened to Google the name of Clark Rockefeller, of Clark Rockefeller's supposed mother who had died in that car crash when he was young, Ann Carter, and found out, like we just did a bit ago, that she was quite alive at the time.
She didn't do that prior to that?
I mean, they met in the 90s. They got married in the 90s. This is 2006.
All right, fair.
So, I mean, it is a different time. So finding this out prompted her to hire a private investigator who soon discovered Clark was not who he said he was. In fact, he had taken steps to conceal himself to the government throughout their marriage as well, besides just not filing that marriage certificate. He had been in charge of filing their taxes, or at least getting them done by an accountant. And he told this accountant to always file them for Sandra as single, telling the accountant that he was actually her brother.
What the heck?
So all of her taxes had been filed singly with just her on them. I mean, he wasn't making money, so it probably wouldn't change too much, but still. Because he was unwilling to expose his identity, and because their marriage was technically never legally real, Christian had no hopes of getting any of Sandra's money in the divorce that would soon follow. In fact, it would be hard to get anything out of it, including visitation rights to their daughter, which is why in the end he agreed to accept the divorce in return for $800,000 and 3 supervised visits a year with their daughter. Plus a couple, 3 supervised visits a year, so once every 4 months, and they had to be supervised.
I mean, okay. He was a bad person, so that makes sense. But that's not very much.
He literally killed someone, as we'll find out. So yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I should not have any sympathy.
Yeah. Plus, he also asked for Sandra's wedding ring and also a dress he had bought her at one point, which is pretty petty.
So petty.
Thanks for the $800,000. Also, give me the ring back.
Probably wasn't real anyway.
I think it was. He had a weird way of getting stuff. Like, it's never, like I mentioned his art earlier, it's never super mentioned if it was real or not. I don't think people ever actually knew. It turns out that you can, like, get famous works of art on, like, loan from a museum or from someone who's selling it, like, while you work out the details of actually selling it to them. They'll let you, like, take it home because, like, what are you going to do? Steal it? Like, they have all your information. So that could be an option. But he also just had them, like, on the ground, like, not even hanging up sometimes. He'd invite them over and be like, oh, yeah, this one's painted by some guy named, I don't know, like Mark Rothko. It's a famous expressionist painter, for those who don't know. And be like, yeah, you know, it's just here. It'd just be like leaning against a wall. So take of that what you will. So I don't know if the wedding ring might have been real. But he definitely got it by dubious means if it was. And then after the divorce was finalized, Sandra left with Ray to London, leaving Christian behind in Boston, now quite a bit more poorer than he had been before. He was part of a very popular social club for rich people in Boston called the Algonquin Club. And he told someone from there, he's like, she's left me destitute. I'm down to my last $2 million. What he was really down to was the $800,000 she had given him, though. He didn't have any money. He also he had to drop out of the Algonquin Club about a year and a half after the marriage. So
poor guy,
saying she took everything from him. Always blamed her.
Of course. Why would he take any responsibility for anything?
Well, he doesn't ever. In July of 2008, Christian was on one of his allotted yearly supervised outings with his daughter and a social worker, because they have to be there, and they were walking around the Boston Common. While walking, a vehicle quickly pulled up beside them, and Christian pushed the Social Security worker to the ground, grabbed his daughter, and jumped in the car and told the driver to take off.
Kidnapping, perfect.
At the time, too, the social worker had been trying to hold on to the car to stop them, and he told them to take off, and the driver gunned it and dragged the social worker for a little bit before he fell off the car. And that night, obviously, a warrant was issued for the arrest of Clark Rockefeller, as he had been charged with custodial kidnapping, assault, and assault with a deadly weapon because of the car. Christian, meanwhile, was transporting Ray across state lines to an apartment he had recently purchased in Baltimore under the name Charles Chip Smith for $450,000. This time, though, his crime would not just be swept under the rug. There were national news bulletins looking for him, Amber Alerts, and the FBI had gotten involved in the investigation. The realtor who sold the apartment to Christian was watching one of those news bulletins when she recognized the man as her recent client and called it in. The feds found him and lured him out of his home by calling him and saying that the boat he had docked at the local marina was taking on water. Your yacht's sinking. And then he ran out to go to the marina to keep his boat from sinking, and they arrested him. And that was on August 2nd, 2008. The kidnapping charge was the least of his issues, though. He maintained his identity as Clark Rockefeller, but the FBI quickly identified him as Christian Gerhartsreiter by matching his fingerprints to latent prints from his immigration file from the 1980s.
Wow.
And this, of course, tied him back to the disappearance of John and Linda Sohus.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I forgot about them.
Yeah. Well, also not just a disappearance anymore. In the 1990s, the new owner of the former home of Dee Dee Sohus decided they would like to build a pool in their backyard.
Oh, God.
But while digging, the construction crew found 3 bags containing human bones, which the authorities tied back to the disappearance of John Sohus, although the bones were not definitively proven to be his until 2010. Originally, there were no marks of foul play on the bones, but they were in 3 different bags. So
if your bones are in a bag, how is there not foul play?
yeah, you don't die of natural causes and then have your body split into 3 different pieces and then get buried in a backyard.
The only way that could maybe happen, but I don't think that's how they dispose of your body, is if you donate your body to science.
Yeah, that is not how they dispose of your body. I think they cremate you if you do that.
That's what I was thinking.
So they immediately suspected the fled Gerhartsreiter because 2 of the bags were from colleges he was associated with. One of them was a book bag for the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the other was from USC, where he had hung around the film school and had actually audited a few classes at during his time in LA County. Additionally, they used luminol in the guest house where he had been staying and found evidence of large amounts of blood in the guest house. But at that time, the trail for Gerhartsreiter had gone cold until his arrest and identification in Boston more than a decade later. While they put the case together against him for murder, Gerhartsreiter went on trial for the kidnapping of his daughter, where he ended up pleading insanity, saying that he had received telepathic communications from his daughter asking him to rescue her from her mother in London. They even had multiple psychiatrists testify that Gerhartsreiter did in fact have some mental issues. The prosecution, however, brought their own psychiatrists that said, although Christian had been diagnosed by them with mixed personality disorder and was also antisocial and narcissistic, he still knew the difference between right and wrong. Christian himself never took the stand to defend himself, and he was quickly convicted for the kidnapping and assault with a deadly weapon, and he was sentenced to 6 to 8 years in prison. A couple of years later, while serving his sentence in 2011, Gerhartsreiter was officially charged with the murder of John Sohus. Unfortunately, not for Linda Sohus as well, as to this day, there has been no evidence that has surfaced about her whereabouts, alive or otherwise. Some believe Gerhartsreiter wooed her and killed her husband, but where did she go after that? You know, I think the more plausible explanation is that Gerhartsreiter killed her somewhere else before hiding the body. And unfortunately, he's not spilling any secrets. It's also, it's assumed that he's the one who sent them the letter about the job in the first place, that they were supposedly going to New York to interview for, and that he maybe got them to pre-sign those postcards that were postmarked from Paris that were sent months after their disappearance. But something weird happened because those did arrive, and John was definitely buried in the backyard. So the evidence in the murder of John was largely circumstantial, but strong given the bags, the luminol, and don't forget the fact that after the murder, Christian had been in possession of John's truck that he tried to sell in Connecticut. In fact, it was enough for the jury to convict him in 2013, and he was subsequently sentenced to the maximum sentence of 27 years to life. At sentencing, he reiterated his supposed innocence, saying that he actually believed Linda had been the one to kill her husband and had run off and disappeared.
Sure.
He is currently serving his sentence in San Quentin State Prison in California and is eligible for parole starting in December 2029. Christian Gerhartsreiter is obviously a pathological liar and a narcissist. He wants nothing more than notoriety that he has never earned. His tale can be seen with either a pessimistic or an optimistic lens. The pessimist would say that you truly can never trust anything someone says just because they say it confidently and have the looks to match. Always be skeptical. An optimist might say that you can truly achieve anything as long as you believe hard enough in your own delusions to make it come true. Whatever you choose to take away from this, I hope it is that Christian Gerhartsreiter is an evil individual who used his powers of manipulation to steal and murder, and I hope he never gets that parole. And with that, that is the end of our tale on Christian Gerhartsreiter, a.k.a. Clark Rockefeller, a.k.a. Christopher Chip, that one's last name, a.k.a. Chris Gerharts, a.k.a. Christopher Gerhartsreiter, a.k.a. Christopher Crow. I think that's all of them.
Did you say Christopher Crow? You got it last.
But yeah, so that was the story. It's pretty crazy. There have been a couple of documentaries on it. I can't recommend the ones that I watched. They're not great. But you can
documentaries.
But you can go watch them if you would like. There's also a dramatic, like Lifetime-esque movie about his story. You can go watch that too. But either way, thank you so much for listening to this, the season 21 finale of White Collars, Red Hands. If you liked what you heard, please give us a review. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a star rating there on Spotify. And then if you listen on any of the other podcatchers, it'd be great if you could just like, subscribe, share, whatever you can do on there. It really helps support the show for free. And, makes us get up in the morning or late in the evening, actually, when we actually record these episodes. So that would help a lot. If you also want something to do for the next 4 weeks when we're off, go back and listen to our back catalog if you haven't already. If you're not here from day one, then there is a large back catalog. Don't listen to the first season, but you can listen to it. I recommend all of the other ones. So that's 20 seasons, if you also include this one, that you can listen to that is heavily supported by me. You can also support the show for free by following us on our socials, facebook.com/whitecollarsredhands, X at whitecollarspod, Instagram at whitecollars_redhands. You can follow us on TikTok at whitecollarsredhands. You can send us an email at whitecollarsredhands@gmail.com. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, you can send it over there. If you want to contact us another way, you can go to our website, whitecollarsredhands.com, and fill out a contact us form there. While you're there, why don't you hit the button that says check out our merch and go to tpublic/dashery and get a hat or a shirt or a book bag that hopefully you will not be burying a third of a person in. Please do not do that. But you can go there. That one's not free, but hey, the best way you can support us though is word of mouth. If people are looking for a suggestion for a podcast to listen to, think about suggesting us if you've liked what you heard, and we'd be super appreciative of it. Oh man, I think that's it.
No, I think you covered it all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you on another season of White Collars, Red Hands.
Red Hands.